Now, a bit of a follow-up on the relay question is thanks to Kevin Tier, I think it was, who made a comment about the wiring in use. This is quite a while ago now. And yeah, it made me think actually. So we've got a current, maximum current, it has to be said, but a current of the order of, let's say, 70 amps with everything switched on at the same time, which is quite high. It's below the level of what the relay is quoted at, so that should be okay. But what about the cable itself? Now, the thing is, I had what I thought was quite thick stuff, and I'm going to go through that a little bit. So this is the cable that was in use. And one of the things with this electrical cable is you can get deceived, if you like, by the apparent size of the cable compared to the insulation. In fact, not long ago I had some very dodgy, I bought some jump leads that were very dodgy. All the cable was, virtually all the cable was insulation, hardly any copper in it. They went in the bin actually, and they were nice crop clips, so I used those. But anyway, back to the job in hand. So this cable here, the core is 2 millimeters across, and of course when current ratings are specified, they are always measured in square millimeters. So you actually have to go from 2 millimeters, in this case 2 millimeters diameter, that's of the core itself, of course, through to the cross-sectional area, which if you remember, cross-sectional area, or the area of a circle, is pi r squared. So you have to use a factor of pi, which is 3.14, and therefore, and we also work from radius, so in this case it's 1 squared, in fact, because half of 2 is 1 and 1 squared is 1, so that's handy. So we have in this one 3 square millimeters, which I did think might not be enough. So I've already, that's why these cables are out of the car. I've already replaced them with some stuff I had available, which was 3 millimeters. So same thing. So half of 3 is 1.5, so 1.5 squared. Now, one of the things that's confusing about wiring charts and whatever the current carrying capacity is that when you tend to measure Y, you're probably measuring diameter with a ruler or a micrometer or something, whereas cross-sectional area is actually more closely related to the radius, and specifically the radius squared, so pi r squared. So in order to get that, if you're measuring with a micrometer or something, it's pi times the diameter divided by 2, all squared. So you can't divide by 2 after you do the squaring. You have to do the divide by 2 before you do the squaring, and that can give deceptively different results. So you do have to work out the cross-sectional area, because that is what gives specifies the limits here. So we have 1 square millimeter would carry 16.5 amps, all the way up to 35 square millimeters being able to carry 240 amps. But perhaps I should put in there whatever the diameter equivalent should be. So I'll quickly do that. Right, because it's complicated, and because there is a squared relationship between cross-sectional area and diameter, the current carrying capacity increases rapidly with increasing diameter. So 1 millimeter, 1.13 in fact millimeters diameter is only 1 millimeter squared, which can carry 16.5 amps, but 2 millimeters, near enough, is 3 square millimeters, and that can carry 33. But 6.68, or maybe let's say 5.6, let's call that 6 to be honest. That's got 25 square millimeters and it can carry 170 amps. So that is quite a rapid increase in capacity, current capacity compared to diameter. And the thing is, of course, and the key to this is that you can't easily just measure cross-sectional area with a micrometer or something like that. You have to calculate it, and it's pi times r squared, or pi times the diameter divided by 2 squared. So it's not that easy. So with all that in mind, and I won't cut this in half to show you the diameter. Oh, have I got some more of it? Hold on, let's see. Now, as it turns out, I haven't got any more of this. I don't really want to destroy these just to show you, but I did measure it before. It was 2 millimeters diameter, which if you look diameter near enough, this one, so it's 3 square millimeters, capable of carrying 33 amps, which clearly we've seen a lot more than that, albeit the run of this section is only, I don't know, probably 40, 50 centimeters in total. So it's pretty short. So yeah, maybe not. Anyway, I have replaced it with another piece of wire, which I also haven't got a spare bit of, but is now 3 millimeters diameter, which is something around this one. So that is probably a bit less than 10 square millimeters, capable of carrying a bit less, I suppose, than 70 amps. So that's a lot better. It is quite confusing. Let's check this one. It is quite confusing that some wires, like this one I was showing a second ago, has traditional insulation, whereas other pieces have got what's called thin wall insulation. Now this is probably a better example of that, where the proportion of the cable which is actually copper is a lot more, because the insulation's a lot thinner. So let's go through some of those. So that one I was just showing you, if I can do this one-handed, I'm just going to put a micrometer of it without squashing the wire. So that is, well, it's probably somewhere between 2 and 3. It's definitely more than 2.5. There is the extra complication of this isn't solid wire, so if I squeeze it, it will get thinner. And of course, even when it's in its casing, as it were, there are actually gaps between the individual strands, so it's probably not as thick as it appears. But this is approximately 3 millimeters, so that's probably quite similar to the stuff which I have put in the car at the moment, albeit it looks a lot thicker than this because it's not thin wall insulation like this one is. So anyway, that's what we've got in there. So 3 millimeters is looking like it's capable of carrying 60, I don't know, 50, between 50 and 60 amps, which is probably fine actually as it is. I got that before I took delivery of some other cable which has recently arrived, wherever that is gone. Well, I've got this huge thing over here. I'll come back in a moment. No, it hadn't gone very far, it was right next to me. So this one is thin wall. Similar to this stuff is also thin wall, the bright red stuff. This is thin wall, but this one is, I think it's 4. Let me see if I can measure that. Okay, so there it is, stripped, and of course it's springy all over the place. And this one is something like, well, it's at least 3.5, maybe 4. Let's call it 4. or somewhere between there. So this is thicker than the previous stuff. Let's compare the previous stuff. There it is. So that's definitely thicker. So this one is probably capable of carrying between 70, probably between 80 and 100 amps, something like that, maybe 110. So this stuff is most definitely enough. And in fact, I probably wafted past this stuff, which is kind of battery cable really, which I think you can see is roughly, certainly 5. So that is something up here, capable of carrying 170 something amps, and that is well over the top. So I shan't be using this. I'm toying with the idea of using this. I have already got some equivalent to this, but any of that is an improvement over the original stuff. So anyway, it is, as I said, cross-sectional area and current carrying capacity isn't as straightforward as it ought to be, really, because you can't measure cross-sectional area. You have to take into account the squared thing and the pi thing. So that's important. Well, that's it really. So that's what these charts are for. So this is my homemade one, as it were. So if your cross-sectional area is just around about 1, sorry, if your diameter is just over 1, that's good for 16.5, all the way up to sort of 5. It's probably good enough for 100 or so, 120 amps or so. All this does depend on whether the cable is actually in a bundle bound up with other wires, because of course once they're next to each other, they can keep each other warm, as it were, and get hotter and hotter, especially if there's loads doing the same type of current. So if they're in a bundle, that reduces the figure, and if the wire is long, that also reduces the figure. So battery cables running between the front and the back of a car need to be thicker simply because they're longer. Anyway, I thought that would be quite interesting little review. So in summary, I've upgraded my relay, but I've also upgraded my wiring. Possibly could upgrade it a little bit more, but I'll leave that as it is for the moment and see how it goes.